Hey, Cosmic Baddies, welcome back to another episode of Chakras and Cuss Words podcast. Today, we are going to look at one of the most, I would say, infamous birth charts. Very chilling. It's a chart that has a lot of speculation, let's say, going around. We're going to look at the birth chart of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, some of you might be wondering, like, who is Jeffrey Epstein? Well, Jeffrey Epstein has really been in the news lately. Um, he is actually somebody who is now unalived, but he is somebody who has a lot of controversy behind them. So, Jeffrey Epstein was born in 1953 on January 20th at 6:15 a.m. in Brooklyn, Kings County, New York. And I would definitely say he is probably one of the most disgusting individuals who's probably ever walked this earth. And there's a lot about him, but let's just look at his back history for a second. So I kind of give some people a background on him in case you don't know who he is. Jeffrey Epstein was an American financer, but a lot of people were always like, how did he get his money? It was very uncertain exactly what he did. He told people he managed a lot of wealthy men's money, like he was a money manager, but the speculation on how he actually became very rich is still there. Some people aren't really sure how he became so financially stable. He's also a convicted ex offender, and I would say he's a total PDF file. And it is believed that he is a human trafficker, okay, that he had a huge human trafficking ring. So his life and his career marked a lot of high profile rise in the financial world and series of criminal investigations that exposed a massive network of abuse involving minors. So his career and his wealth in early years was always very questionable because he was born in Brooklyn and he attended college but never graduated. Despite this, he began a career as a teacher at a very prestigious school called the Dalton School in Manhattan. And he entered this world of finance, and he had a lot of connections with Bear Stearns, and eventually founded his own money management firm that was called J. Epstein and Company. He was known as a firm that only dealt with billionaires, so a billionaire dollar firm. Epstein claimed that he managed the money of very wealthy people, but they had to have a net worth over $1 billion. His prominent client was Leslie Wexner, the founder of L Brands, Victoria's Secret. And Victoria's Secret has had a lot of controversy behind it with exploitation of young women. So this is very interesting that there's this connection between these two individuals. Also, his social connection. Epstein was known for his vast social circles, which included world leaders and royalty and business moguls. So he definitely was at all the places, seeing all the people, meeting all the people, and he associated with very high profile. He associated himself with Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, and Bill Gates. Now, there was a lot of criminal convictions, allegations, and of course, investigations. So in 2008, he was convicted. After an investigation in Palm Beach, Florida, Epstein entered a controversial plea deal where he pleaded guilty to two state felony counts of soliciting a prostitute, and also including one conviction where it had to deal with a minor, and he served 13 months in a work release program. Now, in 2019, he was arrested again, and federal prosecutors in New York arrested him and charged him with sex trafficking and conspiracy, alleging that he ran a years long, probably decade long operation of abusing dozens of underage girls at his home in Manhattan and also in Florida. The Epstein files, they have been concealed, but they're ongoing, like getting released here and there. The Epstein files' ongoing legal proceedings and in 2021 conviction of his longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, led to the unsealing of thousands of documents. As recently as in the early 2026, the U.S. Department of Justice just released millions and additional files, further detailing his connection and some of the scopes of his crimes and some of the things that he was doing behind closed doors are quite disgusting, and also some of his associates. So there's always been a lot of controversy about his death. Some people believe that he may have unalived himself. Somebody may have unalived him. Some people even say that he might even still be alive. So the death and controversy of Jeffrey Epstein is still there. On August 10th of 2019, Epstein was found unalived in his cell in Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York while awaiting trial. The official ruling in New York by the New York City Medical Examiner was the unaliving was by self-inflicted injuries, for instance, a hanging. And there's been a lot of speculation, right? And it's sparked a lot of widespread skepticism and conspiracies. Some people believe that there was too many high profile connections for him to just unalive himself, and that the failure of the jail guards to monitor him was definitely there. Could somebody have malfunctioned the security cameras? However, federal investigations have consistently upheld that no, Jeffrey Epstein unalived himself. Now, in January and February of 2026, so this is all new news, the U.S. Department of Justice, the DOJ, released the largest amount of the Epstein files and records to date. So Jeffrey Epstein has totally over 3 million pages of files and 2,000 videos and over 180,000 images. And this was released and mandated by the by Epstein. And it was also like taking a closer look into his area of operation and also his elite connections. So some of the things that were released that people have, I would say, notice is that the documents have provided a much clearer picture of Epstein and his social circles and also his professional interactions after his 2008 conviction. So you have to remember he was convicted in 2008, but he was still socializing with many high profile individuals. So the files indicated that he was invited, Epstein, to the Buckingham Palace of September of 2010, offering lots of privacy. For recent photos from the files also depicted him as being in compromising positions in Epstein's Manhattan residence. So there's been a lot of talk about some of the people who were in his files. So Elon Musk corresponded probably with Epstein with many frequent emails than previously known, including 2014 discussion regarding the potential visit by Musk to Epstein's private island, though it has not been confirmed if that visit ever took place. Bill Clinton is in the files, and the files contain a summary of unsustained allegations regarding the former president. Notably, both Bill and Hillary Clinton are expected to testify before the House Oversight Committee in late February of 2026. So hopefully this month there will be something going on as part of an ongoing congressional investigation on the Epstein files. Donald Trump, while Trump maintained he had no involvement in Epstein's crimes, the files contain over 38,000 references to him, including flight logs from the 90s and various social correspondence. Jess Staley, unsealed documents revealed allegations of sexual misconduct against the former Barclays CEO. Oh my goodness. So he was Barclays CEO, including claims that he abused women at Epstein's properties. And, everybody is denying their correspondence with Epstein and they're denying that they were part of his inner circle. But a lot of the emails and suggestions are proving otherwise. Of course, all these are allegations and nobody has been charged. So there's definitely some legal fallout in the current status of his associates. Despite the massive amount of evidence released, the DOJ has noted that horrible photographs and emails do not automatically constitute a basis for new criminal investigation or charges. So Ghislaine Maxwell, she remains in federal prison serving a 20-year sentence for basically her involvement. She was recently subpoenaed to testify via disposition for the House Oversight Committee. Professional resignations did happen as a fallout has extended in the business world. So there's definitely been some CEOs who've been getting either fired or decided to resign. For instance, Brad Karp, a chairman of a prestigious law firm called law firm Paul Weiss, resigned in February of 2026 following the release of the emails linking him to Epstein. And also, there's a lot of redaction errors in the Epstein files. The DOJ faced significant backlash because of this, because a lot of people feel like it shouldn't be hidden who he's emailing. That the only people who should have some sense of privacy is the victims, but not people who he is emailing, who many people see as additional abusers or people in his inner circle. So some people say it's technical errors. Some people also say that has to do with civil litigation. And there's so much more to come with these Epstein files because the survivors have had many lawsuits and are continuing to have lawsuits. So we will see what happens next with these Epstein files. And there's a lot of controversy about, is Epstein alive or if he is unalived. I personally don't know. I mean, I'm going to tell you what I think. I personally think he is unalive. Um, I don't think that he is alive because if he was alive, that is too much of a risk. So let's get into his birth chart reading. So he's a very deviant, foul, disgusting abuser. He was born January 20th, 1953. I will put the chart up for you guys to see. It is believed that he is a life path 3 and he has a Aquarius sun. Man, he's over here giving Aquarius is a bad name. He has Aquarius sun at 0 degrees and 7 minutes in Aquarius. It is believed that he has a moon in Aries at 7 degrees and 14 minutes in Aries. It's very interesting, very, very interesting when we look at the energy of this movement of these Aries moons. I would say Aries moons and air signs when the sun is a air sign and then you have a fire element, especially like an Aries moon, it can be very volatile. Also, we have an ascendant as a Capricorn, and he is believed to be a water dragon in Chinese astrology. So his chart is a mixture of water, earth, and cardinal signs for the most part, especially with the Capricorn ascendant and the Aries moon. I'm going to just read his charts so everybody knows what his chart is. He has a Mercury in Capricorn. He has a Venus in Pisces, Mars in Pisces, Jupiter in Taurus, Saturn in Libra, Uranus in Cancer, Neptune in Libra at 23 degrees. He has a Pluto in 22 degrees, retrograde in Leo, and he has a Chiron in 15 degrees in Capricorn, Ceres 3 degrees in Gemini, Pallas 0 degrees in Aries with that moon, and Juno 13 degrees in Pisces, and Vesta 1 degree in Capricorn. The North Node is at 12 degrees in Aquarius, which is very interesting because we are going to get some movement with the nodes later on this year, which are known as the Destiny nodes. We also have Lilith at 8 degrees retrograde in the sign of Leo. And we have the Fortune 4 degrees in Scorpio, the ascendant in Capricorn, and as some would say, the midheaven in 6 degrees in Scorpio. His planets, his sun is in his first house, which makes me think identity and him being very selfish really stands out. The solar sun is very dominant when it's in the first house. So this is probably somebody who's, obviously not just an abuser, but he's also very seen as somebody who wants power. The moon is in the third house, which I think he was able to create a lot of emotional connections with his moon being in his third house. His Mercury is in the first house. His Venus is in the second house. His Mars is in the second house. His Jupiter is in the fourth house. His Saturn is in the ninth house, which there's definitely controversy with people who have Saturn in the ninth house. He also has a Uranus in the seventh house, you don't say, and a Neptune in the ninth house, Pluto in the seventh house, Chiron in the first house, Ceres in the fifth house, in the second house, and Vesta in the 12th house, the North Node in the first house in Aquarius, which is very interesting because you see the challenges with the collective, and Lilith in the seventh house. Now, as a Capricorn rising in 12 degrees with a sun in Aquarius in the first house, it definitely gives to me somebody who's very much structured on their own will, their own area of survival, and encompassing very, very selfish things, and also very things that could be seen as very intimidating. So even though like he doesn't seem as intimidating, he is very intimidating. And I would say that his victims probably felt that area where they were around him, you could just tell that he was very intimidating. Him having all this money made him intimidating. Him having all these connections made him seem very powerful. So I'm going to say I'm very proud of the women who spoke up against him and allowed him to get caught. But then you have that Aquarius sun also in the first, where it really shows that he's very non-conventional. Some would even say that he is sick. Obviously, he's very sick. There's a little bit more than just sickness. It's like sickness, deviant, disgusting, and then harming other people. And the Aquarius is known for being very rebellious and is also known for having that area of collectiveness where the collective sees him and, like shame, the shame on him of being this horrific person. And the North Node in Aquarius, the area of challenges, definition of challenges, and him not compromising for anybody and being very abusive. Chiron in Capricorn, which is interesting because to me, I would think of early wounds possibly he was a victim of some sort of trauma, which does not give him any permission to do what he did. But there's definitely an emotional tie in an area where when some of the ones who were oppressed become the oppressors, very centered off of intimidation, showing their some would say their muscles or their power. And the Aries moon in the third lets me know in some ways that he definitely was charismatic with not just his victims, but also with the people that were in his social circles. It's quite disgusting that these people like leaned on him so much. I personally think they were probably doing some of the same things he was doing, but it definitely makes me think that this energy was where he had a presence about him and people kind of liked to get wrapped up with him, and he was able to gain their trust. The Venus and Mars in Juno and Pisces in the second house is interesting because I personally think that his relationships and the way he was able to adapt in certain relationships was some of the ways that he built his income. A lot of people are saying, like, how did he really get his money? Like, why would these people trust him? They trusted him because they were sick and disgusting too. And he showed his sick, disgusting nature to them. That Venus and Mars energy, is, you know, very bold, very driven on like a soul bond energy, and an emotional depth. So he was able to know like who he could share certain dark secrets with and who he could bring that awareness to. And with it being in the second house, we really see that energy of money. We also see that energy of wealth and gain. And that second house just feels like there was a lot of exploitation going on about relationships, intimacy, areas of movement. So he was able to exploit other people and also, I would say, and also bribe, not just bribe, but blackmail. And he was able to do this because that is the area of self worth that he had. He knew that if he had everybody's secrets, he can control the narrative. He can control the resources. He could control all the things. So he was able to establish that because that illusion that that Pisces element brings, he probably really honestly thought he was going to get away with it forever, especially since he was convicted. And it's not like it ended his world, right? He was convicted and he still was mingling with high profile people. So the shame on his conviction never hit him because he understood that the people who hung out with him because they had those same dark secrets too. And there was a intimacy between them, an emotional depth between them, and a bond between them. So the Mars and Pisces, it almost like magnetizes some people, right? And he was able to magnetize that with his relationships. He was able to see the people who were into the same shit that he was into, and they were automatically drawn to him, right? So he understood which ones he could trust. Now, the Jupiter in Taurus, and what's interesting about the Jupiter in Taurus when I look at it, the Jupiter in Taurus to me feels like there would definitely be something that is very expanded right here. It would be physically expanded. The Tauruses are considered like hard workers, stable. And it would also be centered around the area of rituals with that. I always said that Tauruses are known for being like foodies and a lot of fucking. So I definitely think that he was able to bring some type of comfort level, some type of area of comfort to people, as sick as it sounds, but people definitely did enjoy hanging out with him because they were sick and twisted too. Now, when we look at the energy of the seventh house, this is where it really gets interesting. The seventh house is known about energies of partnerships, and it's also known about energies of movements. Some would say commitments, relationships, marriages, and Jeffrey Epstein is known for all of his relationships, right? The areas of abuse that came with those relationships, also the area of commitment that came with those relationships, the area of who he associated himself with. A lot of people are very shocked that these high profile individuals would even immerse with somebody like that. And relationships for him are not casual. He has a Uranus, a Pluto, Lilith, and Leo in the seventh house. He was the leader of the relationships. He was the one who made that intense nature of the relationships. He was the power in the dynamics of those relationships. He manipulated tons of people because he really did take that energy, that low vibrational energy, and he was able to create something that was very explosive, dark, disgusting. And he did it with the acts of exploitation and abuse of the feminine. And we see that relationships is something that he's very famous for. What's interesting is we have the uh, Pluto is in 22 degrees, which Pluto has a lot of darkness behind it. And Pluto has a lot of energy of movement behind it. I would even say the area of desire, the area of unaliving. And there is some concerns that unalivings did occur with him. I guess there's like a trap door, some type of doorway that would lead straight to the ocean. Some people are saying, he was unaliving his victims. So it's very dark, it's very heavy. Then we have the Uranus, which is actually not in the sign of Leo, but is actually in the sign of Cancer. And that Uranus is centered with the energy of the, as some would say, the energy of the feminine. It's in retrograde. And I feel like Uranus represents area of movement, of technology, and we see how he used technology. We see the energy of the feminine, which is supposed to feel very, very soft. It's supposed to feel very centered around peace, especially with Cancer. And then Uranus in Cancer makes it feel very explosive, very spontaneous, very, and some would say, twisted in some elements with the Uranus in Cancer. Now, what's also interesting with his chart, I'm going to say that the Uranus in Cancer also makes me think that there was a form that always, like, I don't believe he was never married, right? He never married Ghislaine Maxwell. And he was able to have like this very non-conventional relationship with her. It's something that, like, he would always be an abuser around the feminine. These two highlight very well with the acts that he was charged with the forms of simulation, the forms of movement, the forms of control, and the forms of very low vibrational intensity he had. When you look at the chart of people who are very sick, sometimes it's like kind of hard to read because it's like, because that there's people who have these transits who are nothing like that. And I don't want people to think that they are, but there is definitely somebody who has some of these transits and some of these aspects in them, and then also have some area of control in them and some area of movement that is centered off of control, power, and abuse. And unfortunately, people, some people who are the most charismatic happen to be the biggest abusers. And I will say, I believe Jeffrey Epstein, was charismatic. I didn't know any of his, I didn't like read anything about him until after I heard people talking about him. So I didn't even know who he was. I had to really go and research like who he was. And I was like, how did he get rich? And that seemed to be like the $1 billion question. Nobody really knows how he started and got rich. I believe he was kind of, what's that word? Initiated. I feel like there's a dark, very elite circle that is involved with a lot of trafficking, and they saw the potential in him and he was initiated in, and then he held his presidents. And that's how he was able to build these circles. And he continued to. Now, what's interesting is when we look at the ninth house, the ninth house holds Saturn. Now, there's a lot of speculation when it comes to the ninth house. He has a ninth house in Libra with Neptune. The ninth house with Saturn in 27 degrees. To me, it shows areas of where education is constricted, and there's definitely an area of blockage that shows. There's also an energy of movement that feels very constricted in being somebody who is structured off of philosophy, spirituality, and having a mature sense of wisdom about them. It's like he was never a wise elder. He was never somebody who was here to progress for humanity. He was never somebody who was able to create justice. The justice and the compassion with the Saturn in Libra feels like he was here to show us evil does exist, injustices does exist. Power is the ultimate motive. Money rules a lot. It rules a lot. He was never really able to teach us anything except for balance, and truth does come out, but only so much. That the area of justice and compassion, some people are just evil and they don't have any compassion. I personally think that Jelaine Maxwell, she knew, from what it seems like, she knew a lot, everything, right? I don't understand why she only has a 20-year sentence. I think she should have like life. Um, but we definitely see that there is a disadvantage in the area of higher thinking and wisdom with that Saturn in Libra in the ninth house. Also, the Neptune in the ninth house makes me almost like, it's just very disgusting mindset, low vibrational mindset, a mindset of creating harm, receiving, he's much more than an energy vampire. Like, he's a ritualistic, sadistic bastard. Like, it's much more than just draining young energy. It's literally very, I don't want to say demon because, or like, it's like the worst, right? And I think that's what a lot of us have to understand is some of these most disgusting deviants, some of these most disgusting demons, some of these most devilish type individuals are truly horrific. They were born like that. There's just the evilness in them that is very selfish, and very disgusting, just very disgusting. And um, you just hope that somehow justice will come for them. But we see that delusion with 23 degrees in the ninth house, where I would never say like he was a high minded individual. He was able to create a success for himself, which many of them are. Many of them are. So, a lot of these people who do horrific things, some could say sell their souls, some could say they have no souls, some could say they have no compassion, they work for the underworld. But people who do these horrific things, a lot of times, we see that the compassion and the delusion of like never getting caught is right there. And the Neptune is in 23 degrees of Libra, which deeply, I think he felt like he was some type of teacher. He thought he was some type of like almost like prophet or king. Very, very delusional, very delusional. And when we look at the area of the midheaven and the area of Scorpio and the part of Fortune in the 10th house, that energy shows truth, deep, dark, occult like, disgusting, Illuminati like secrets being held. And he, in some ways, exposed them because so many of us only were able to speculate, right? So many of us only guessed that there was like this deep, dark underworld of truths of the human trafficking ring. There was the Wayfair controversy, there was Pizzagate controversy. All these conspiracies are now coming up, and people are saying they were real. That energy of truth, transformation of how we change our perspective, the energy of movement. So, with Scorpio in the midheaven, or on the midheaven, as you would say, there's a depth and there's a very dark intensity about that. And we see that. And it could be centered around the energy of where certain individuals will put this with their career. But with Jeffrey Epstein, it was to expose that this is real, that this is happening, that these conspiracies that we thought were just conspiracies are actually real. So it's quite interesting that his midheaven is Scorpio. Also, we see the energy of the movement that it's bringing. Like, there's no way to say, no, this didn't happen. We see like a million pages of it saying this was happening. So it's very weird and eerie. And it's making us see the truth that many of us wanted to avoid, unfortunately. But that area of investigation of something so taboo and gross coming forward and almost like slapping us in the face, slapping us awake, shows us that we can only close the door in denial for so long until we have to see the truth. We have to own the truth. And what's interesting is his Mars is in a strong sextile with Chiron, which expresses energies of anger. And it also expresses areas of aggression and passive aggression. And Chiron is known for being the wounded healer. The area of direct like attacks would be Mars. So we see that energy of very an aggressiveness, but also because like if you look at him, he didn't look aggressive, but I'm sure he was very passive aggressive. And we see this energy full throttle. And I would even say of areas of abuse shows with him. And I do think he probably was a victim as well, but that still does not give him a right. And then he also has a Jupiter and a strong trine with his ascendant, which to me, the ascendant in Capricorn shows an energy where he had that CEO makeup. He had that CEO legacy, and how being on top, being the billionaire, being all these things was exposed in areas of material success. He was a billionaire. He had billionaire friends, but we see that all this abilities didn't matter because he was still very disgusting and sick in the head. And then we also see that his sun squares Saturn. So that sun in Aquarius squaring the Saturn in Libra, to me shows the area of where he is blocked. Being somebody who the soul should feel compassion, the soul should have an energy of movement that feels entwined with the energies of love somewhere in there, treating other people like a human, that we see that it was like blocked, and that his energy was focused off ambition, control, and self realization of dealing with his demons. He never dealt with his demons. In fact, he took his demons to other people. He brought it on to other people. And there's definitely like a rejection about him on a solar level, like a coldness. I don't know if it came from like a father wound because it's with Saturn, and Saturn represents the masculine. But it does feel like there was some type of rejection from him. Like rejection came somewhere in his life. And when that rejection occurred, it hit him on a solar level, on the soul's level. And then the soul was tainted, very tainted. And it definitely feels like he led a life, even though he was a billionaire, nobody could be proud of that life that he led, right? And he definitely had some areas of movement that felt very, very dead in the own energy of livelihood. The makeup of an abuser is very interesting, as some would say, the blueprint of the astrology of these people. To me, it's interesting. Also, he had a Uranus opposite his Chiron, which Chiron, the wounded healer, the energy of movement, where this feels like a combination of not just traits, but also the energy of focus and also the energy of spontaneous aggression. And while he may had some brilliant mind attributes about him, somewhere him inflicting this energy onto others was his main focus. And he had a great difficulty of being a good person. Like, did he ever think of being a good person up late at night? I don't think so. I think he was fine being this horrific person that he was. Yeah. So that is the birth chart of Jeffrey Epstein. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Were you surprised of any of his transits? Were you surprised, or do you think they make sense? Don't forget to give this podcast a like and a rating, and of course, a follow if you aren't following. And everybody have an amazing day. Bye.